Hi there, my name is Tony Otoa and I'm super excited to be speaking to you today. I'm very honored to be invited to speak on a topic that I believe is very important, not just for myself as an individual, but important for many people out there who are dealing with that serious situation of mental health. I'm very excited to be among artists, creatives, people who understand that it's about you, it's about getting the best out of you to become the best version of yourself. But also people who are going a long way in making sure that whatever we see in society doesn't have to be in our individual lives, but whatever we see in society can be to the benefit or for the greater good. But before I begin my remarks, I just want to start off with a very interesting story. I read this story a couple of days ago and it really touched me. It's a story of a young man who had a great future, and I believe he still has a great future because he's taken a turn around. But his story is one that speaks to mental health. And allow me to read this story. And the story's title is At War With Myself, and it's a story about Felix Opal's outstanding struggle for soberness. Felix Opal puts it down like this. It is 5 a.m. in the morning, or rather a few minutes to, and I can tell that even with a wristwatch or phone, due to the sound of doors or cracking doors outside, there are constant yells and people shouting, "Rita!" and all the obscenities that you can think of. "Open up, you whore!" And I believe that is okay language because we're talking to creatives. A vulgar, ugly, disheartening as it sounds, this is the normal way of waking up as a shopkeeper in Kimwanyi Zone, Wandegea, a suburb just 2 kilometers away from Kampala city center. And I believe that is just very close to where we are today. It's a place where abnormal is normal and where you have to get comfortable with being uncomfortable. To many, this ghetto is known as Katanga, a place with peculiar possibilities, an increasing crime rate, drug abuse, marijuana smoking, excessive sale and consumption of illicit alcohol, prostitution, gambling, child labor, bar fights, domestic violence, and regular pickpocketing. Survival in this place requires one's sixth sense to be on a super alert situation or mode at all times, leaving nothing to chance. Yet for many months, this is what I called home. In the room, I slowly started coming awake. Everyone is awake and a loud voice shouts, "Wait, Professor! Where is a pistol?" in Uganda, loosely translated to "Professor, send that pistol." My nickname in the ghetto is Professor because of my high literacy level and the fact that I wear spectacles. And no, I don't own a gun. Pistol here is a slang for a plastic bottle of waraji because once pocketed, it kind of resembles a pistol. In a crowded, messy, smelly room in my bedroom that night, I turned slowly lest I inconvenience the person next to me. I pass on the pistol, snuggled like puppies in the unmade bed bag and lice-infested mattress on the floor. I turn and shout something equally crude as I pass the small bottle. This bottle is shared among 3 people, and the unwritten rule is that it has to return to the owner to finish the last sip before another bottle is opened by someone else or bought from the nearby shop. That is how the day starts, and that's pretty much how it goes. We pay $2,000 for the sleeping space and $3,000 for VIP. Aspiring academic with a bachelor's degree and a master's degree under my sleeve get to such a place. I was not in Katanga for some investigative award-winning undercover piece. Neither was I doing research for a project. This was my home, and for a strange way, it was what I found absolutely normal. Honestly, I can't explain why I got myself into this situation, but what I know, or what I do know, is that I enjoyed the pain, the constant hangovers, vomiting, and fever rashes. In a way, I felt I deserved it, and it was God punishing me for the wrong decisions, manipulation, lies and selfishness, pride, egocentrism, disappointments, broken heartaches, unfulfilled promises, and broken families and marriages that I had caused. Drinking for me was fun and a stylish way of living. At least it is what I felt when I started testing alcohol, or when I started my first alcohol drink 15 years ago of being on earth. This grew into the university days and progressed when I was given the opportunity to correspond for the Observer while at my final year at Makerere University, where I was pursuing a bachelor's in mass communication. I was contributing for the arts and culture and sports sections, occasionally pitching it on many occasions in any other bit since it was a weekly newspaper. The frequency of my covering social events grew tremendously, and so did the drinking. But by then, it was manageable. It was okay. And in fact, I became one of the best entertainment journalists with my observant, behind-the-scenes coverage of the industry and its players. As I was entertained, I was the entertainment journalist. Event organizers love to hate. It gave me purpose, meaning, poise, and in so many ways, it came in so many things. Temptations of the payola, which we preached to be ethically evil, but sometimes a necessary evil. Punctuated, of course, with binge drinking and ended access to nightclubs and private parties. Before I knew it, I was not just attending events. I had become an event myself. Media agencies, show promoters, producers, artist managers had me on speed dial. Beer companies, communication directors treated me like the lost nephew that returned home. But it, of course, had to get to a tipping point. And how did we get to this tipping point? It all happened without me knowing. I was becoming an abnormal drinker. I was not drinking like other men. The biggest challenge, however, was when my mother, Nora Florence Nabugabo, suffered a stroke in January 2011. It tore a part of me with her as I became her caregiver at Mulago Hospital. I was helpless, confused, and by the time she passed on in March that year, I hated the world. That was the hardest time of my life. They say time heals wounds, but they lied. My world froze. My clock stopped, yet time remained moving for the rest of the world. At a time of loss, there was nothing easier than pity and nothing harder to accept than the truth, because there was no easier ways around grief. During the past 14 years, or the last 14 years since her passing, I have taken alcohol to stop feeling the loss. In a way, the alcohol numbed the pain. The terrible sleep patterns were replaced with countless hangovers, so I continued to drink and maintain that. I drank for the past, which I could not change, and for the future I was not promised. But little did I know that the economics of addiction and alcohol was not the problem, but my turning into it was becoming now my solution. I had sharpened my shovel to dig myself into the pit I found myself in. That pit swallowed many of my dreams, my hopes, my aspirations, my promises, including the most important one, a promise to my mother on her deathbed that I will make her proud no matter what. Soon my life became unmanageable. The Observer cut me loose from a retained journalist to a correspondent status. Sanyu FM, where I worked as a co-host on the Saturday morning sports show, Sports Unlimited, had also had enough of me showing up clearly tipsy for the show. I would later get a second chance to right my wrongs professionally. When I was a successful candidate at the Fireworks Advertising Agency with their public relations wing, brainchild Basson Masla, now Brainstorm Basson, as a senior PR and digital marketing executive, things changed. But that stint only lasted 10 months. It only lasted 10 months as the Boto and my struggles took center stage. The only sensible and honorable thing I accomplished during those turbulent years was finishing my master's degree in public administration and management in January 2018 from Makerere University. My disgruntled, jobless, clueless with no one to blame but myself, I went into an alcoholic tailspin, drinking recklessly, living dangerously, carelessly and worthlessly. Doom and gloom followed. My landlord threw me out over rent arrears. My circle of friends changed from corporates and journalists to those who shared a commonality: drunkenness. Before I knew it, shame, guilt, anxiety, restlessness, and manipulation became my closest allies. I hopped from friend to friend, crashing in their homes for a few days or a couple of weeks until I exhausted my list. When that happened, I went into hiding. And I was reportedly missing by my friends on social media on September 19, 2019, after them failing to see me for months. As pathetic as it might sound, that got me to realize that I was still loved. Friends, family, colleagues in the media put in an endless effort to find me, but I was not lost. I had just dropped off their world and now lived in a new world, one where they could never suspect me to be in. Then, of course, in 2020, in the throes of the COVID-19 pandemic, Mr. Felix Opal, my father, was diagnosed with prostate cancer and throat cancer. Having been an absentee father most of my life, his sickness did not take a toll on me until much later. There was so much to ask him, but I never garnered the courage. On February 27, 2021, he breathed his last. I did not cry at his burial. I cried like a baby when my mother died, but deep down, I was screaming. Once again, the bottle came to the rescue. From there on, there was no turning back. I had no father, I had no mother, I had no home, nothing to fight for, and I just convinced myself I was done. I entrenched myself into the ghetto, Katanga, becoming my companion, where the party found me, and it's where I spent the nights, bars, makeshift restaurants, verandas, name it. I honed my skills of fitting in by standing out, earning the respect of renowned thugs in this filthy place. I picked up some of them from prison cells, so I was assured of protection and the endless flow of hard liquor. I had helped them secure national IDs, and again, I was also their voice of reason in constant confrontations. A relationship counselor when domestic violence broke out, and a sports betting expert on all matters to do with football. But of course, salvation has to come in. And how did my salvation come in? Meanwhile, my drinking was worse. My friends and my family feared for the worst. Alcohol had enslaved me to the lowest of the low. A friend called Julius had just spent 6 months at a place in Gulu and had returned a totally changed man, free of alcohol and narcotics. My sister and my girlfriend decided this was the place I should be taken to. I did not hesitate. I did not hesitate because I knew I needed help. I needed divine intervention, and on March 1st, 2025, I walked through the doors of PSCTA Uganda, a non-profit rehabilitation center in Gulu City, and PSCTA stands for Prevention, Awareness, Counseling and Treatment for Alcoholism and Addiction Illnesses. 93 days from March 11, I walked out of PSCTA, reborn, fresh, clean, sober, with a new perspective on life. My spiritual bankruptcy had been replaced by hope, perseverance, and a rock-solid belief in a higher power and the hope and the urge to help another suffering alcoholic out there. Moving forward, last week I celebrated making 5 months sober. And how has my journey been? It's not been easy, heck no. At PCTA, I suffered the worst withdrawal syndromes. I had to be hospitalized at St. Mary's Hospital at Cho for 2 weeks. I slipped into coma for a day and gave the doctors a scare as my system threatened to shut down from the decades of alcohol abuse. The doctors told me my sensory nerves were so synced with the alcohol that they could not function without the other. I lay in the hospital, drip after drip, with no remedy but to ride the discomfort out. I cannot forget the tremors, the pain, the nosebleeds, and by the 3rd week, I was back to PCTA, and I could finally walk by myself and sit through the classes. If you're tired of alcohol and drugs taking your life, remember it's okay to not be okay. Just reach out for help. The Lord who saved me can save you too. For now, I'm part of the Alcoholics Anonymous meetings with a new life restoration to others and also cement to my sobriety. We meet at Christ the King Church on Tuesdays, every Tuesday and Friday, between 1 to 2 p.m. free of charge. So to join us, the only requirement is your desire to stop drinking. This is a story I decided to read to you by Felix Opal, who titled it "A War at Myself." Now, for many of you who've listened to this story, it's a very telling story, which is very much a story of many of us. You know, when I stand here and I speak about such a story, it's a personal story, one where someone has decided to expose his vulnerability to reach out and support another person. And I think that is what's really important. Vulnerability. How do we expose or use our vulnerability to be that anchor for another person to get stronger and become better? So it's a profound privilege to stand here today, at the Art for Social Engagement exhibition. And again, I believe this is where creativity meets the cause. And where, brush strokes, we're looking at the pictures around here, the paintings here, and the amazing stories here. Where color and every form, every movement tears down the walls of silence that surround mental health. Mental health is often, of course, spoken in hushed tones. We all know this. You go to places where no one wants to talk about it. Back in the day when we were growing up, they say, "Oh, you're Kasimu. That one is a mad guy. Do not interfere." It's talked about in hushed tones, wrapped in stigma and misunderstanding. Yet, it's one of the vital parts of our human experience, our emotional compass, our internal weather system, and sometimes our greatest battlefield. Those struggles are invincible, but they are real. We have people dealing with them on a daily. They are real. We have friends dealing with them. We have family dealing with them. They are real. And we cannot ignore this. And they are deeply personal. But you see, the interesting thing about art, creativity, is that it offers us a powerful lens to see and to feel and to heal. I just looked at a very interesting painting that talks about healing, that talks about gaining that freedom. It's powerful. You can only see that through art. You can only see that through a certain lens. Some things you can't explain. Yeah. My words might not be able to explain it to you, but maybe when you visualize it, it comes out. It's a profound privilege to stand here today at the Art for Social Engagement exhibition, a gathering where creativity meets cause, where brushstrokes echo stories, and where color and every form, every movement tears down the walls of silence that surround mental health. Like I said before, mental health is often spoken about in hushed tones, and these hushed tones are things that we are used to. In African society, we are used to speaking about these things in hushed tones, and you've had these things in our society, or your musiru, or your tategera, or there's something wrong with that person. That's not that person. But what I'm speaking about here is that wrapped up confusion that's wrapped in stigma and misunderstanding. And yet it's one of the most vital parts of our human experience, our emotional compass, our internal weather system, and sometimes our greatest battlefield. Those struggles are invisible or invisible, but they are real, and we have to acknowledge that reality. And they are deeply personal because amongst us, amongst our friends, amongst our family, we have people who are struggling with mental health issues. But you see, the beautiful thing about art, creativity, and what it does is that it offers us a powerful lens to see and to feel and to heal. There's so many paintings here that speak about healing, paintings here that speak about feelings, paintings here that speak about going through emotional trauma, but also getting out of it. What we want to do today is to celebrate this, but also to see the reality and the powerful lens that these paintings express. And let me tell you why this is important. You see, creativity is not just about making something beautiful. Many people assume it's just about making something beautiful, but it's not, because it is that raw and filtered channel of expression, a language beyond words. And for many, art is the only place where the unspoken pain, confusion, anxiety, and hope can take shape and breath. I just saw a very amazing sculpture of, the bleeding tree. A story that speaks to resilience despite whatever has gone on in the individual or the artist's life. But it speaks about that story that you can't get out of probably words, but maybe art can do a better job at doing this. So for many, art is the only place where that unspoken pain and confusion, anxiety, and hope can take shape and breath. Now, whether it's painting in strokes of rage or sorrow, or music that captures the depth of despair or joy, dances that release tension trapped in the body, or writings that give voice to the silent mind, creativity transforms the struggle into meaning. It creates meaning in whatever we are going through. That's what creativity does. That's what people who are exhibiting here are doing for us today, and are probably doing this for the next day or so. But what is also important is that we need to understand the creative process itself. The creative process itself is a struggle. It's not as easy and linear like many people would assume. It's a struggle in itself. It's about, a wrestling with inner demons, the chaos of thoughts, and the weight of overwhelming emotions, because that's what goes on in people's minds, or the creatives' minds, as they're doing this. Getting or dipping into your vulnerability and telling your story into something that can make a difference in someone's life. Earlier on, we were talking about sharing on the concept of vulnerability. It's really about someone going into their depth and getting their story and making it resonate with you. And it could probably be your anchor into dealing with whatever situation you're in. And that is what art does. So it's really about those inner demons, the chaos, the thoughts, and the weight of overwhelming emotions. But it is this struggle that also gives art its deepest power. The fact that you can get into that inner being of yourself, that's where the deepest power is. And again, in wrestling with those inner storms, the creators and the artists, and what they're doing is that they're not just expressing their pain, but they're naming it. They're naming it. They're owning it. And they're, of course, transcending it. That's very important. And that's a very, very huge thing that many people underestimate. They're transcending it. So what this is for me is it's really about building bridges from darkness to light and from isolation to connection. Getting out of your situation in isolation to coming to an open area and connecting with people, some of whom might actually be facing similar situations as yourselves. So art for me is a very important thing. But also what I wanted to just add here is there are truths in saying this. Healing often begins at that threshold. And it's very important to understand that. You see, when someone creates art, they are not just making an object or a performance. They are engaging in an act of courage. It's an act of courage. The fact that you are transcending your vulnerability and getting out there in a very prominent way, it's an act of courage. And courage is what not many of us have. They are reaching out to themselves, to others, to the world and saying, I am here, I'm struggling, but more importantly, I am human. We're all human beings. And in understanding that, that is where the true power and potential is. The power to express ourselves for others to see, for others to judge, but also for others to work with us. That's the true power. Art invites empathy. It invites us to sit with discomfort, to understand suffering from a new perspective, but also to understand ourselves even better. What also art does is that it dismantles stigma by putting faces and stories to experiences like you will see around this room. But also, there are too many experiences and photos and expressions that are often ignored or dismissed. What art does is that it brings that out. Art creates a community, a solidarity in moments when we feel most alone. When I look around here and I look at how many artists have come together to express their artistic skills, their stories, their vulnerability, people from refugee camps, people from universities, people who have done different things in their lives and the pursuit for happiness, coming into one room to express themselves. That is what we call creativity. So in this exhibition, every piece you see is more than just an artwork. It's a lifeline. It's a lifeline. It's a story of surmounting the courage, surmounting the fear to come out courageously to say what we have to say. It's a testimony that healing is possible, that creativity is a powerful tool in the fight for mental health, awareness, and acceptance. But more importantly, that struggles, while daunting, can also be spaces of immense growth, resilience, and transformation. So what I want us to do today and for the next few days is to celebrate the artists who dare to confront their darkest nights and turn them into dawns of hope. Let us honor the viewers, the listeners who approach these works with open hearts, willing to listen without judgment, but also willing to come to a common understanding of where the artists are coming from. But I also wanted just to say, before I end, let us all commit as individuals, as communities, and as a society to normalizing the conversations about mental health. It is okay not to be normal. It's okay. Let's have these conversations more and more as individuals, as a society, and also support the creative expression as a form of healing and breaking the chains of stigma that imprison so many. Art is not just a mirror reflecting the soul. People say it's a mirror reflecting the soul. It's not just that. Art is not just a mirror reflecting the soul. It's a hammer with which we can shape a better, more compassionate world. And I hope that through creativity, we can see in what we're seeing over these next few days, that struggles become expressions and expressions become healing. And before I end, I just wanted to say, I wish you the best, blessings, and more healing to you. Thank you.